Hello, good morning. We start with breaking news. The BBC chairman, Richard Sharp, has insisted this morning that there was no conflict of interest in the decision to appoint him to the role. It follows his alleged involvement in arranging a loan of £800,000 for Boris Johnson. A government investigation will now look into Mr Sharp's part in discussions between multimillionaire Sam Blythe and Boris Johnson, a few weeks before Mr Sharp was announced as the government's choice for BBC chairman. Well, this morning, Mr Sharp spoke to the BBC.
Having had a discussion with the Cabinet Secretary about avoiding conflict and the perception of conflict, I felt comfortable, and I still feel there was no conflict, because at that stage what I was seeking to do was ensure that the process was followed exactly by the book, and that the process hadn't started of any kind in terms of any support that Sam was going to provide to the Prime Minister.
Well, our political correspondent Ali Fortescue is in Westminster for us. And Ali, just remind us what investigation is actually now going to be going on into Richard Sharp's appointment.
So 2 probes into Richard Sharp's appointment, one from the BBC itself, another for the Commissioner of Public Appointments, who looks at how ministers appoint people to public office. So 2 investigations, but as you heard there, the chairman of the BBC being interviewed by the BBC itself, always a slightly awkward dynamic, but he is very clear. Nothing to see here is basically what he's saying. All of this, of course, just remind people about his links to the former Prime Minister, whether he helped Boris Johnson secure a loan guarantee to the tune potentially of £800,000 in the weeks before he became BBC chairman. He said he was just connecting people, connecting Boris Johnson to a distant Canadian cousin. But of course, a lot of people are saying that this is raising questions about the impartiality of the BBC and the way that that process works. You heard him in that interview. He says that he took steps to make sure that due process was followed and that the Cabinet Secretary was aware. There has been some spotlights worth saying on Simon Case, the Cabinet Secretary. He, of course, has been the consistent throughout Boris Johnson, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak's premierships. Questions about whether he has done enough. And here Richard Sharp saying that he had been made aware. He's making clear he's not going to stand down as chairman of the BBC. Worth saying, some people have pointed out that in the past, for example, under Tony Blair, Gavin Davies became BBC chairman. His wife worked in Gordon Brown's office, the then Chancellor at the time. So plenty of people saying the way that the BBC chairman is appointed is often a little bit murky. But all of this, of course, I think just again suggests that well-connected people in politics are helping each other out. The murky world of political appointments, that is bad for Boris Johnson, bad for Rishi Sunak too.
And not a great day for Nadhim Zahawi. Still pressure on him, his role as the chair of the Conservative Party over his tax dealings.
Yes, that's right. Nadhim Zahawi still in post. The holding response from government at the moment, the firewall that they are relying on, is that the ethics advisor has been asked to look into Mr Zahawi. I think, again, with this story, as with the BBC chairman, in a sense, the person that does have questions to answer is Boris Johnson. He was the one who appointed Nadhim Zahawi as Chancellor, but the shadow of previous administrations is hanging over Rishi Sunak, because remember, he is the one that stood on the doorsteps at Downing Street, said that he was going to change the course, restore trust, and we have Gavin Williamson sacked over allegations of bullying, Dominic Raab, Justice Secretary, under investigation over bullying allegations, now Nadhim Zahawi. That makes it difficult for Rishi Sunak to say that he's changed the course. Labour, of course, saying that these are the same old faces, the same old sleaze. I think perhaps the most damaging thing maybe for Rishi Sunak is that he has faced a challenge to show that he is not out of touch. He, of course, is a millionaire, the husband of a billionaire. The fact that this is being seen as a small mishap, potentially £4 million being paid back to HMRC, a £1 million penalty, £4 million rather, £1 million penalty, as is being reported. That being seen as a small mishap, I think, will bewilder people, given how much money we are talking about. And again, sort of adds to the sense that it is one rule for them, one rule for everyone else, and that is potentially very damaging for the Prime Minister.